Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game with over 100 cards, and 99% of those cards are bad. However, these bad cards still make it into players' Edison format decks every single day. Join me as I dive deep into the abyss of bad card design and put these unloved pieces of cardboard to the ultimate test. 3 duels against random strangers on the internet. At the end of each episode, we'll reveal each card's place on the cursed tech tier list, ranking them from almost competitive to downright unplayable trash. Will we stumble upon a broken combo, invent a new deck, or will we just go insane trying to win a duel using Frog the Jam? You will just have to wait and find out. This is Cursed Tech. Hello and welcome to the 9th episode of Cursed Tech. So the other day I was sitting down and I was thinking, why do we have to attack our opponent every single game? Really, every game. We just keep attacking our opponent over and over and over again. And then I was doing the dishes and I was thinking, life points? We have to make our opponent's life points go down every single game? They've got to go all the way down every single time we play Yu-Gi-Oh! And then I was laying on the floor and I was thinking, why don't we play Mill? In today's episode of Cursed Tech, we are milling our opponent out of cards in their deck. I know you guys love alternate win conditions, so let's play some Yu-Gi-Oh! Or not play some Yu-Gi-Oh! You see, with this deck, the line between the two is very thin. Mill doesn't really exist in Edison format, primarily because it isn't good. It's really bad. But that doesn't mean it isn't fun. And oh boy, I have been having too much fun playing this deck. I love this deck. Maybe I am evil. Or actually, maybe I'm Weevil. Empty Jar is a deck that's existed for as long as Konami has been printing jars. It sort of followed a Diamond Dude Turbo style of gameplay where you try to chain together a lot of spells in a single turn to completely mill out your opponent. You're sort of playing a version of roulette where you either draw all your cards that combo together and win, or you brick and you lose. And the fact that Morphing Jar has perpetually been at 1 means you're probably more often than not going to lose. My take on Mill is very different from its predecessor. It definitely borrows from the classics, but let's just say Weevil would be proud. Introducing Millipede.
That's not the worm. That's his tongue.
Today's episode is about worms. No, not those worms. Not those worms either. Exactly. Those worms. They exist in a subcategory I like to call Millipedes. And this consists of Needleworm of Tournament Pack 3 fame and Warmworm of no fame, of complete irrelevance. And we don't like to talk about Shieldworm. We don't need to talk about Shieldworm. Unless you're using Inferno Reckless Summon, which I'm not, so yeah, we don't need to talk about Shieldworm. Here is the plan. Worms be milling. No, that's the whole plan. That's the entire plan. Also Verdant Sanctuary. Let's look at the deck list. Behold, my Edison format Millipede deck profile. There is a lot going on in this deck, and it's going to take me a little while to explain it, but bear with me. First of all, you have a bunch of flip effect monsters. The best card in your deck is Morphing Jar, probably. Needleworm does a similar thing of making your opponent's deck 5 cards thinner, and Warmworm mills 3 cards whenever it is destroyed. Morphing Jar number 2 is an interesting card. It says, shuffle all monsters on the field into the deck. Then each player excavates cards from the top of their deck until they excavate the same number of monsters they shuffled into the main deck. Special summon all excavated level 4 or lower monsters in face down defense position. Also send the remaining cards to the graveyard. So if your opponent starts milling spells and traps, this will get their deck smaller, and if they get anything above level 4, they will not be able to summon it. This is a very interesting card, and all of these flip effects are very interesting due to a tech card that I am very proud of, Acid Trap Hole. If you all don't know, this card triggers flip effects. So what this means
is you can set a flip monster, and on your opponent's turn, you can use Acid Trap Hole to give any monster in your deck a quick effect flip effect. This is very interesting. Say your opponent is going to disrupt your plays, maybe make a Bryonic, maybe make a Black Rose Dragon. You can use Acid Trap Hole to flip up a Morphing Jar number 2, and at quick effect speed, shuffle all monsters on the field into the deck. This is at its best when in the standby phase, you can activate Acid Trap Hole targeting your set Morphing Jar, and you don't have to wait for your opponent to attack Morphing Jar. You can use Morphing Jar offensively to mill cards using this combo. But Acid Trap Hole gets even crazier. You see, when this card flips up the monster, it also destroys it. And this can be used to dodge effects. Let's say your opponent normal summons a Caius, and they target your Needleworm with a Caius. You can activate Acid Trap Hole targeting your Needleworm. This will flip up the Needleworm, mill 5 cards, and then destroy it before the Caius can resolve. This is great to dodge effects, but this gets even crazier if you have a little card called Verdant Sanctuary up. Because Acid Trap Hole destroys after it flips face up, you can use Verdant Sanctuary to add another of whatever monster you flipped face up. So yeah, Acid Trap Hole, sick card. Let's move on. This card is a Book of Moon for the field at no downside. Late game Book of Eclipse, when your opponent's field is full of monsters, can just win you the game by itself. Card Destruction is another one of those cards. Late game Card Destruction, when your opponent has a ton of cards, is a game winner. Hand Destruction does the same thing, gets you closer to your floodgates or your win condition, and gets your opponent 2 cards deeper in their deck. Shallow Grave is amazing because you do not care if your opponent summons monsters. In fact, you kind of want them to summon monsters, and this resets all your flip effects. We don't care about life points. This deck does not care. Gold Sarcophagus is great because it can banish Necroface. When Necroface is banished, each player banishes the top 5 cards of their deck. Not only is your opponent's deck 5 cards thinner, but also you could banish their Heavy Storm. You could banish maybe their Plague Spreader. This is great at disrupting your opponent's deck. Then you've got the Floodgates. 2 Messenger of Peace, Level Limit, Wall, and Gravity Bind. You could run Threatening Roar, that's an option, but I decided to go with Floodgates that are must answers on their own. Every single one of these cards can lock your opponent out of the game by themselves. Ultimate Offering. This card is great because you are ideally going to be drawing more cards on your opponent's turn using the Morphing Jar. Ultimate Offering lets you set monsters during your opponent's battle phase and lets you trigger their flip effects. This is also very good when paired with Verdant Sanctuary because Verdant Sanctuary is going to be adding you cards to your hand. Theoretically, you could have a Worm get destroyed, activate Verdant Sanctuary, search another Worm, then use Ultimate Offering to summon that Worm. That worm gets destroyed, use Verdant Sanctuary, search another one, summon that one, and there you have milled 9 cards and stop your opponent from killing you. These are your Heavy Storm stoppers, and this is ideally your Bryonic stopper. This first duel, we are up against the Gemini deck, and we are going first. Also, there's 2 cards different in this list. I've got a Swords of Revealing Light and a Gokipon, but I replaced those with 2 Messenger of Peace, so just a slightly different list. We are going first, so we are going to activate this Gold Sarcophagus. This will banish a Necroface from the deck, and we will both banish the top 5 cards of our deck, and then we are going to activate Swords of Revealing Light, set 2 cards, and pass the turn. My opponent draws for turn. They're then going to normal summon a Dark Valkyria, set 1 back row, and then pass the turn back to us. We draw for turn, and I guess we just pass the turn right back to them. They're then going to activate Gemini Spark, targeting their Dark Valkyria to destroy our Swords of Revealing Light. That's all fine with us. They're then going to normal summon a Blazewing Butterfly, and then activate Supervise. This will let the Blazewing Butterfly tribute itself to summon the Dark Valkyria from the graveyard and give it its effect. The Supervise will then activate to summon back the Blazewing Butterfly. They go into the battle phase and attack us for 1,500 and 2,100. Pretty good turn from my opponent, but let's see what we can do. We draw a Gokipon, which is no longer in the deck, and the Gold Sarcophagus will add the Necroface to our hand. We're then going to activate Hand Destruction, discarding a Necroface and a Book of Eclipse, and we draw into a Verdant Sanctuary and a Sangan. We're then going to set the Sangan, activate Verdant Sanctuary, and set our Book of Eclipse, and then pass the turn to our opponent. They're going to activate Reinforced Truth in the end phase. This will let them summon the Gemini Soldier from their deck. They draw for turn. They're then going to activate the effect of Dark Valkyria to destroy our face down and and thankfully for us, it is the Sangan. This Sangan will let us search our deck for the Morphing Jar. Then they are going to normal summon the Gemini Soldier, go to the battle phase, and try to attack us, but oh wait, we have Ultimate Offering. This card lets us normal summon or set during our opponent's battle phase, and that is going to be very good for us. We are going to pay 500 life points to set our Morphing Jar, and they decided to redeclare with the Gemini Soldier. They attack into the Morphing Jar, and we will discard our opponent's hand and both draw 5 cards. My opponent will get the effect of Gemini Soldier, but that is no problem because we've got a lot coming next. My opponent's then going to attack over the Morphing Jar with the Blazewing Butterfly, and when they declare another attack, oh look, we can pay another 500. They have the MST, but we have the Solemn, so that is no problem, and we are going to set a Worm. They're then going to attack over the Worm, which mills 3 cards from the top of their deck, and then they try to attack with the final monster. We can activate Ultimate Offering for a 3rd time this turn to set the Needle Worm. My opponent is then going to attack into the Needle Worm. They're going to mill 5 cards. Oh wait, I'm looking at it. I think my opponent might have attacked twice. Oh well, it doesn't matter. We have the Book of Eclipse to stop all of their monsters. They are going to set some back row and then draw 4 cards in the end phase. Only 5 cards left in deck. That's not looking too good for you, my opponent. We draw for turn, and you know it's the best card in our deck, the card Destruction. We activate Upstart to try to bait out a Solemn in case they have it. We activate the Shallow Grave to try to bait out some back row, and we are just going to activate card Destruction to win the game via mill out. This next duel, we are up against Lightsworn Hero, and let's just say this duel might be a little bit of a team effort. So we're going to activate Upstart Goblin. We draw a card Destruction, the best card in our deck. We're going to fire off that card Destruction, getting both of us 5 cards deeper in the deck. We draw into some decent cards. We're then going to activate this Upstart Goblin to draw into a Book of Eclipse, set this Sangan, and then pass the turn. My opponent draws for turn. They're going to activate Solar Recharge, drawing 2 and milling 2. Thank you very much. They're then going to activate Charge of the Light Brigade, milling 3 more cards. Thank you so much, sir, making my job a lot easier. They are going to add a Garroth. Oh no, you're not going to Lumina Garroth. You're going to Lumina Garroth me? You're actually going... You're going to Lumina Garroth the mill deck? Oh my god. Okay, he attacks into our Sangan. We add a Morphing Jar, and then he attacks us for 1850. Then in the end phase, he mills 3 cards, and then mills 2 more. 5 cards for free. Are you kidding me? We're then going to set our whole hand and the Morphing Jar. We pass to our opponent, and in the standby phase, we are going to activate Acid Trap Hole. This will flip up our Morphing Jar. And my opponent will draw, my opponent's going to draw 5. And we fill up all of our resources again. They need to win this turn. They need to win this turn right now. Okay, they're going to activate Lumina to summon out a Lila. They're then going to activate the Lila, targeting our Acid Trap Hole. That's fine. Then they activate Heavy Storm, which is a good start, but we have this Book of Eclipse. This will set all of their monsters face down. Then they're going to summon out this Malicious, normal summon a Stratos, add a Malicious Edge from their deck to their hand, still adding cards, hasn't learned anything. Attack us for some damage, but if it is not game, I mean, you're about to draw 3 cards in the end phase, and the Lightsworns will trigger because they activate in the end phase, so yeah, he would have milled it. Like, I think 8 cards in the end phase, plus drawing 3. Thank you, my opponent. That was a team effort. That was a good game. A good team game. Now it is time for a best of 3 versus meta, and my opponent is playing Frogs. We get to go first, which is always very good in this deck. Our opening hand looks okay. We're then going to activate 2 Upstart Goblins. This will let us draw 2 fresh, new cards, and they're pretty good. We set an Acid Trap Hole, a Verdant Sanctuary, and a Worm, and pass the turn. My opponent draws for turn. They're then going to activate Soul Exchange on our Worm, but not too fast. We can chain the Acid Trap Hole. This will flip up the Worm, destroying it, milling 3 cards off the top of our opponent's deck, and activating Verdant Sanctuary to add another one from our deck to our hand. I love this deck. That is such a... I mean, what does my opponent do? They have nothing to tribute. They can't use this Soul Exchange, and they're then going to activate 1 for 1, summoning out a Substitoad. They just attack us for 1,000, return the Spot Frog to the hand, set a back row, and then pass the turn. We then set another Worm that we searched, and a few more cards, and then pass the turn. They're going to activate Raigeki Break on our Verdant Sanctuary, and that's fine with us. We just let that happen. They're then going to activate Treeborn Frog in the standby phase, summon it back, and then normal summon the Substitoad. Alright, you're just gonna get all these cards out of your deck for me. This is very good for me. This is a team effort. Thank you so much. We draw a Needleworm for turn. We're going to set that worm and pass the turn back. My opponent is going to summon back this Treeborn Frog in the standby phase. They're then going to pass the turn. We draw a Gold Sarcophagus. That is fantastic. We're going to mill the top 5 cards in my opponent's deck, then activate this Gold Sarcophagus and banish the top 5 again. We both banish 5. We then set this Morphing Jar number 2 and then pass the turn. And, I mean, they just admit defeat. What are they going to do? All right, it is time for game number 2, and we are going second. Let's see if frogs can deal with it post-side. Our opening hand looks pretty good. Or they're just going to set 1 monster, set 2 back row, and then pass the turn. We're going to activate an Upstart Goblin, and then activate the second Upstart Goblin, and we get the Shallow Grave. We're just going to set a Needleworm, set a Book of Eclipse, set a Solemn Judgment, set a Dark Bribe, and set the Shallow Grave, and then pass our turn. My opponent is going to activate Dust Tornado, hitting the Dark Bribe. Then they are going to Tribute Summon this Jinzo. That would be very bad for us, but we are going to Solemn Judgment the Jinzo. We draw a Gravity Bind, which is great. We're going to flip up this Needleworm, mill 5 cards off the top of my opponent's deck, set this Worm and the Gravity Bind, and pass the turn. My opponent is going to activate Raigeki Break, targeting our set monster, but oh no, it was the Worm. So you discarded a card to mill 3 cards off the top of your deck. Not too bad. They're then going to summon the Treeborn Frog, set a monster, and then pass the turn. We draw the Shallow Grave, which is really good for us. We're going to activate the Shallow Grave, which will summon back the Worm, and they will summon back their Dupe Frog. Probably should have summoned back the Plague, but hey, no backseat dueling. They're then going to go to the main phase, flip up this Raikou. Oh my god, please keep milling some cards. Raikou in a frog deck. Then they're going to tribute summon this Thessalos for absolutely no value at all. They stack a card, summon the Plague Spreader, and they go into a Stardust. There's not a single card in my deck that destroys. Oh my god. They're then going to attack into our Needleworm. We're going to activate Book of Eclipse. This will set all of our monsters face down. They're then going to flip this Raikou main phase 2 to destroy our Needleworm. But, I mean, I was going to mill 5. You milled 3. We're in this together. And they flip up their monsters and draw a card. I think they should have drawn 2 cards here because I think Book of Eclipse just flips all monsters, but it's okay, it doesn't really matter. We set another card and then pass the turn. They're going to activate the Treeborn Frog in the graveyard. They then activate Upstart Goblin, draw a card, we gain 1,000. They go to the battle phase and they try to attack, but we are going to activate this Gravity Bind. They then normal summon this Dupe Frog and Dupe block us. They still just, they're not understanding. I am never going to attack you. I'm never going to destroy anything. My only win condition is mill. I love that my opponent is still they need to stop me from doing stuff, but they don't understand. I am never going to do anything. All their monsters get changed to defense, and then we draw a Verdant Sanctuary. We flip this Worm, activate the Verdant Sanctuary, and then pass the turn. They draw for turn, they activate Heavy Storm, and we have the Dark Bribe. I mean, they've got a lot of cards, and I don't have that much going on, but they activate Enemy Controller, steal our Worm, and then they are going to switch all their monsters to attack. They get in some powerful damage. They see the clock. They see the 10 turn, 20 turn clock. They are going for it. I respect the grind. We draw a Needleworm, which is very good for us. We're going to set that and then pass the turn. My opponent just passes the turn. We draw a Book of Eclipse, flip the Needleworm, mill 5 cards off the top of my opponent's deck, set this Book of Eclipse, and then pass the turn. My opponent activates Soul Exchange on the Needleworm. They're then going to tribute summon a Gores, I believe, and pass the turn. We draw a card destruction. We're going to fire that. He has to discard his hand, and then we just pass the turn. And things are not looking good because he has 3 cards in deck. We have a Book of Eclipse set. Let's see what he can do. He summons a Caius, banishing the Gravity Bind. Goes to the battle phase. We take this 200 any day of the week. And then we are going to activate this Book of Eclipse, and he will draw himself out of the game.
And now for the moment you have all been waiting for, the Cursed Tech tier list. I love this deck. This deck is surprisingly powerful. Having quick effect flip monsters is such a cool, underexplored oh my god. Is that the next episode of Cursed Tech? A flip control deck that uses flip monsters like quick effects? Oh my god. Oh my, I could even use Verdant Sanctuary to use the Acid Trap Hole to get the oh my god. Future episode. right there. This deck does 3 things well. First, it turns your opponent's staples into bricks. Secondly, the disruption it has is very interesting and powerful. Quick effect, shuffling all monsters on the field into the deck. That's incredible. That's awesome. That's a very interesting, crazy form of disruption. And third, floodgates. You play a lot of powerful floodgates. And that's very good. I mean, this is basically old school Mystic Mind. Do they have an out in their main deck? However, there are some big problems. And the biggest problem is Bryonic. This card can be made by almost every deck in Edison format, and when it comes down, you're probably going to lose the game. I mean, you're making your opponent draw cards, they can just pitch all the cards in their hand, bounce your whole field, and you're probably going to lose. That card is a major problem for this deck. Therefore, I'm going to have to put this deck in fun and cheesy. I did a lot of testing with it, and out of the 20 games I played, I won about 60% of the games. And that's a lot when you look at this deck list, but with better players and the Ice Dragon, yeah, this deck is gonna have some trouble. But overall, I mean, this deck is what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about. I know, I'm looking out at the people watching this video. You all have attacked your opponent way too many times. It is time to stop. Build this deck in paper, bring it to locals, have some fun, because that's what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is all about. It's about having fun, trying to pull off crazy stuff, and milling your opponent out of cards in their deck is a very crazy thing to try and pull off. And plus, you get to play Worm. So, yeah, this deck is very fun. Very fun. Thank you all for watching, and the only thing left to do now is to spend $1,500 on a playset of Needleworm. See you next time.